hope for the best for Damar Hamlin after that terrifying incident on the field last night. There's also been some real scrutiny on the league's reaction to what happened, both in the minutes that followed over the last day, of course, as the NFL waited an hour to officially suspend that game, and then just announced today that it will not be resumed this week. Joining us live right now in studio is our Bills and NFL insider, Vic Carucci. Vic, always appreciate your time here. Fans really were angry last night, especially as you're watching the broadcast and they said at one point, once Damar Hamlin was taken off the field, each team had 5 minutes to collect themselves and then they were going to start playing football again. I mean, I think people were like, what are you talking about? That turned out not to be the case, but then it still took an hour to find out that the game was called off for the night. What have you learned in terms of how that all played out?
Yeah, well, it started, of course, as a contradiction in imagery, because as we're hearing the references to the 5 minutes and then start playing again, we're also seeing these images of Josh Allen, Stefon Diggs, and any number of Bills players and Bengals players looking distraught, looking as upset as we've ever. We've not seen these visions of these players. We haven't seen these images, I should say. And I think that's what wasn't computing. That was the conflict. What I've heard along the way, now the league is denying that it ever had any intent of resuming play immediately. We still cannot ignore the fact that you saw Joe Burrow starting to warm up. You saw a process beginning, and Joe Buck, and again, I commend ESPN's work all the way through as far as handling this situation, which no one has a guidebook for, but saying about 5 or so times this 5 minute thing will get going in 5. And they're talking to, and the ESPN has said they're in constant contact with the league during broadcast. That's standard procedure. So someone was informing them of that, and I'm not going to, I'm going to point a finger of blame in the direction of the league, but so what? They ended up at the right place.
Yeah.
That's all that really matters.
There's no doubt about it. You've covered the NFL for a long time. We've never seen anything like this, right? I mean, what were you thinking as a longtime observer and seeing a lot of injuries over the years, but just how unprecedented this was?
Well, first of all, this was unprecedented. I can't compare it to anything. I've seen other traumatic injuries and some gruesome injuries through time of covering this game, 40 plus years, but nothing where you felt the true life and death element of it all. And that's what I think was taking the breath away from the collective viewing audience. Not only, I mean, those of us watching on TV, but in that stadium. And again, it was a Bengal crowd, as it should be, a home game for the Bengals. And those folks, I think, were as shaken as anybody from the stories I've heard. I think it's also, if we're looking for some positives, just the response, the collective response of both teams. From what I understand, one of the Bengals team physicians was highly instrumental in getting Damar Hamlin's heart going again. And again, I'm not diminishing at all the efforts of the Bills medical staff, because they were true heroes, and all the first responders, and getting him stabilized. That was the other question of how much time it took. Well, they were trying to get his heart going again and get him stabilized, and then get him in the ambulance and then get him to the hospital.
It has been inspiring to see the love and support from across the country, all over the world, really, and just how big a story this has become. Finally, Vic, I got about a minute left.
Sure.
Damar Hamlin's health is all anyone is thinking about right now, but in terms of the decision-making process for the league, they're not going to play this game this week. There was no way that was going to be able to happen.
Yeah.
Do you see a scenario in which this does end up being a game that's played?
Here's the thing, and again, we say this with the disclaimer that we know where the priority is, but at some point there is a next step. I would envision now that the fact that they wouldn't be doing anything this week with resumption, and how could they, that it's left open the possibility of a creation of Week 19, which would be unscheduled, but play the game a week after next week's scheduled end of regular season, and then the open week that exists between the conference championships and the Super Bowl eliminated, push the playoffs forward, and then you stick the game there. I know it creates other questions about, oh, no bye for the Bills or the Bengals, and everybody else is getting this extra time off. Look, there's no perfect solution. A lot of layers to this thing, a lot of moving parts.
All right, Vic Carucci, our NFL and Bills insider. Appreciate your insight, Vic. Thank you.
My pleasure.